Greetings everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Gamer Analysis, where in this episode we shall be taking a look at what VR players do and experience within the first 48 hours of VR. Why 48 hours, you may ask? Well, 48 hours is about the time in which someone who bought VR, whether it's for their PlayStation 4 or the PC, really gets to terms of what VR is all about. They begin to experience all the things that VR has to offer. Either that, or they return the thing because they can't stop getting sick, or trying to interact with objects that aren't actually there and looking like a complete tool. Let's begin. The idea of VR, or virtual reality, is to emulate real life through the means of technology and perception, which naturally makes players wonder, if I do this, will that happen? One such instance of this is when you play a VR shooter for the first time. It's that thing that you want to get it over with before you actually play the game. Can I shotgun myself in the face? Can I put a gigantic hole between my own eyes? Or will it not work? Is the game going to be realistic about this, or is it going to let me live? I absolutely must find out. Well, as it turns out, most games do not allow you to shoot yourself in the face, except for that one game that's intentionally designed to be kid-friendly and unrealistic. You can most definitely shoot yourself in the face there. While virtual reality is designed to emulate reality through the use of visual trickery and high accuracy controls, there is just one thing that VR cannot do: movement. Virtual reality is an experience that is usually done either standing still or sitting down, and unless you somehow have the space for full room-scale VR experience, or dare I say it, wireless aircraft hangar-scale VR, which is actually something that the VIVE Pro's new lighthouses will be designed to do, virtual reality does not allow the realistic interpretation of movement, unless you get yourself one of those omnidirectional treadmills which cost a fortune. Instead, while the player is stood still, the world moves around them, which can happen in a variety of different ways. The most common method, and unfortunately the least realistic of them all, is teleportation. Simply point where you want to go and zoom, you're there in an instant. While this style of movement makes games much more inviting to those who get motion sick easily, it breaks the immersive experience for those who are looking for a much more immersive experience. People who want to get the most amount of immersion after their VR experience usually go for the locomotion route. This is what pretty much all first-person shooters like Call of Duty use. You have a joystick or a trackpad, you push in the direction you want to move, and you move. In some games you can even jump, but jumping is a very rare occurrence in virtual reality, only being added as a necessity for level design, or in the case of Serious Sam, to avoid attacks. The downside of locomotion is that while it is the most effective form of movement for games, only the most hardcore and mentally trained VR players can use it effectively without losing their balance or even getting nauseated. Some games even have on-the-spot turning, including ones that primarily use teleportation. However, turning is much less taxing on the brain than direct movement, and can thus be added to much more games without much repercussions. Virtual reality does a pretty darn good job of emulating most of our senses: sight, hearing, and touch. Currently, the only way to experience taste with VR is if you were to strategically place some food in front of you in the exact position that food is in virtual reality, which isn't very feasible to say the least. But would you like to know what virtual reality smells like? It smells like this: deodorant.
Pyro Gaming is not currently sponsored by Ted Baker, or anyone for that matter. Please sponsor me.
This is what VR smells like. VR games can be rather taxing on your body, and dare I say it, a viable method to keep fit, especially on your upper body when you're using a bow. But with movement comes sweat, and the only good way to combat sweat is if you play VR outside in a cold place, or give yourself a quick spray of deodorant before you dive into VR for a couple of hours. Say hello to Serious Sam. He's the protagonist of a series called Serious Sam, would you believe? He's generally not considered to be a scary guy on his own, he's just an ordinary human. Sort of. Humans aren't scary things, to most people, but they sure are in VR. It's like, holy hell, what is that monstrosity? Run for the hills, everyone. Mind you, Serious Sam can pull off some pretty cracking moves. If it isn't obvious, virtual reality requires the use of motion controls for most games, and what happens when you pair up motion controls with the inability to see the outside world while you play? You get a lot of broken light bulbs, especially in my case. For those new to VR and haven't already done so, I would highly suggest you go and visit eBay and buy some of these, protectors for your motion controllers. Not only do these rubbery protectors defend the controller from scratches and damage, they also make them more grippy to handle, especially when your hands get sweaty beyond comprehension. They also make them slightly thicker, so if you're not a fan of how thin the controllers are by default, then these protectors make them much more comfortable to use. Often a lot of people who have the hardware and the money to be able to afford VR choose not to get VR because they complain that their play space would be too small. Well, here's a prime example that you don't need a massive amount of space to enjoy VR to its fullest, but as you can see, the chance of hitting something is rather high, so controller protectors are a must. And there we have it, 5 things that VR players do the first time they get VR. If you have more things that VR players may do upon getting it for the first time, or even have more topics that I should talk about in gamer analysis, then make sure to let us know in the comments section, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the Pyro Gaming channel for loads more videos like this coming to you very soon. See you around, everyone.